Alright guys, Coach Sigler, and this is Owen. It's almost time for his bedtime, but I had to get him for the video. We had a malfunction when it came to the iPad today when I went over the essay questions for tomorrow and next week for second block. So I'm going to redo them right now in my house, and I'm not getting paid extra, so you better use this and enjoy it. Number one, why did the founders choose federalism instead of a unitary form of government, and how has this benefited your life? Now, the question's asking, why did the founders choose federalism instead of unitary? You've got to know the difference between both of them before you can answer the question fully. Now, federalism is the division between power between the states and the national government. A unitary form of government is when power is wholly vested and centrally controlled by a central government. Now, why did the founders choose federalism over a unitary form of government? Well, you got to remember, 1787, when they're writing the Constitution, federalism was the best choice. The Articles of Confederation created a weak union, and the people were still afraid to give all the power to central government. Therefore, they were against that unitary concept. Federalism was that middle ground. You would have, the central government would have full power in a federal system, while the states and the local governments would still have some power, so power is shared. It seemed to be a really good compromise for both sides. Now, federalism, if you think about it, also limits the power of the central government because the states still have power for themselves. Now, the second part of that question is, how has this benefited your life? Well, that can be a lot of opinion in that one, and that's fine. But remember this, because of federalism, because of that shared power between the central and the states, you are able to be independent. You have freedom. Other people in other countries don't have as much freedom as you have. So one way that it benefited your life is you have more liberty and more freedom. Right? Number two, what is the difference between judicial restraint and judicial activism? All right, these are both judicial concepts, and usually these are used by federal courts and the Supreme Court. Now, judicial activism, well, let me start with restraint. Judicial restraint is when judges rule on cases according to the law, not by their personal beliefs. So they do not take initiative on social and political questions. Now, judicial activism is the opposite of that. You may have a judge who rules on a case based on how they believe instead of what the law says. And in that situation, they are getting involved in social and political questions. Now, you'll hear a lot about activist judges. Activist judges are judges who are going to rule on cases to their personal benefit and not what's best according to the law or the people. The third question, how has the presidency changed the founders wrote Article 2? Well, the presidency's changed a lot. We talked about this in class. You look at the early presidents, especially Washington. Washington was so bored and had so little to do, he actually invited people to his house, the White House, to come